The silent scream. The discovery that changed everything. The morning light filtered through the crystal spires of New Thylos, casting rainbow patterns across the peaceful city. Researcher Veltar adjusted her bioluminescent sensors as she worked in the deep archives, a vast underground chamber where her people stored their most precious discoveries. The Thelorians had always been explorers of knowledge rather than conquerors of worlds. Their crystalline bodies resonated with frequencies that allowed them to communicate across vast distances, making them natural archaeologists of the cosmos. Veltar had been studying an ancient artifact for 3 lunar cycles now. The device appeared to be some kind of emergency beacon, discovered floating in the debris field of what had once been a thriving star system. The metal was unlike anything in their databases, and the energy signatures suggested it was incredibly old. Her colleague, Zonkeri, approached with his characteristic gentle hum that indicated curiosity. "Any progress with the relic?" Zonkeri asked, his crystal blue form flickering with interest. "I believe I found the activation sequence," Veltar replied, her own amber hue brightening with excitement. "But I'm concerned about what we might find. The quantum resonance pattern suggests this beacon contains a message of extreme urgency." The 2 Thelorians exchanged glances. Their species had encountered many dead civilizations in their explorations, but something about this artifact felt different. It carried an emotional weight that seemed to press against their consciousness even when inactive. The message from the dead. With careful precision, Veltar activated the beacon. The device hummed to life, projecting a holographic image that made both researchers step back in shock. The being that appeared was unlike anything they had seen before. Tall and imposing, with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages, the creature spoke in a voice that carried the weight of an entire civilization's final moments. "I am Thekmora, last speaker of the Merak Union," the hologram began. "If you are receiving this message, then perhaps there is still hope in the galaxy. We were a proud people, builders of wonders, protectors of the innocent. But we fell to something that should not exist in any universe where life has meaning." The image shifted, showing beautiful cities with architecture that defied gravity, gardens that bloomed between the stars, and beings of various species living in harmony. Then the scene changed, and both Thelorians felt their crystalline hearts grow cold. "They came from the void between galaxies," Thekmora continued. "The Shadowkin Empire. They are not like us. They do not build or create or love. They consume. They drain the life force from entire worlds, leaving behind only empty husks. They feed on the fear and despair of dying civilizations." The hologram showed massive black ships descending from space, their hulls seeming to absorb light itself. Wherever they landed, the vibrant colors of the Merak worlds faded to gray, then to nothing. Veltar watched in horror as entire cities withered and died, their inhabitants collapsing as their life energy was drained away. "We fought them for 7 years. Thekmora's voice grew weaker. "We called upon every alliance, every friendship we had built across the stars. Some came to help us. They were consumed too. The Shadowkin grow stronger with each civilization they devour. They learn our tactics, adapt our technologies, and add our knowledge to their own." The terrible truth. Zonkeri's harmonic frequency shifted to one of deep sadness. How many civilizations have they destroyed? The hologram seemed to hear his question across the millennia. By our count, they had consumed 47 intelligent species before they reached us. We were the 48th. Each race they devour makes them more powerful, more cunning. They are not just conquerors. They are existence itself turned malevolent. Veltar's amber glow flickered with fear. "How do we know they're still out there?" "Because," Thekmora said with grim certainty, "they never stop. The Shadowkin cannot create life, so they must consume it. They travel in cycles, returning to previously harvested worlds to drain whatever life has managed to regrow. They are patient, methodical, and utterly without mercy." The image showed a star map, with dark tendrils spreading from galaxy to galaxy like a cosmic plague. We managed to track their movements before we fell. They follow a pattern, consuming civilizations in a spiral that moves inward toward the galactic core. If our calculations were correct, they would reach the outer rim worlds in approximately 3,000 of your years. Both Thalorians felt their life frequencies stutter. 3,000 years had passed since the Mirok extinction. The warning. Whoever finds this beacon, Thekmora continued, know that you are likely next. But do not despair. We learned things about them in our final days. They fear only one thing, unity. Every species they have consumed fought alone, called for help too late, or trusted in diplomacy with creatures that view compassion as weakness. The hologram's form began to fade, but Thekmora's voice grew stronger, more urgent. There is one hope. In the outer spiral arms, there are young civilizations that the Shadowkin consider too primitive to be worth harvesting. If the advanced races could unite with them, share knowledge and technology, perhaps together you could mount a defense that would not fail. The message ended with coordinates, technical specifications, and a final plea. Do not let the galaxy fall to eternal darkness. Do not let the stars grow silent. Find the others. Unite them. And perhaps the universe will still remember what it means to create rather than destroy. The terrible realization. As the hologram faded, Veltar and Zonkeri stood in shocked silence. The implications were staggering. The Shadowkin Empire had been consuming civilizations for millennia, and according to the Mirok calculations, they were due to return to this sector of the galaxy. We have to warn the Council, Zonkeri said, his crystal form pulsing with urgency. And tell them what? Veltar replied. That an unstoppable force of cosmic destruction is coming to drain the life from our worlds. That every civilization that has faced them has fallen. The Council will want proof, and by the time we can provide it, it may be too late. But even as she spoke, Veltar felt something else. A deep scanning pulse was washing over their solar system, subtle but unmistakable to beings who lived in harmony with cosmic frequencies. Something was probing their worlds, testing their defenses, cataloging their life signs. They're already here, she whispered. The gathering darkness. The two researchers raced to the surface, their crystal forms shifting to emergency frequencies that alerted every Thalorian in the city. As they emerged into the daylight, they saw it. A shadow on the horizon, growing larger by the moment. Not a cloud or a storm, but something that seemed to devour the light itself. The Shadowkin advanced scouts have found them. Within hours, the sky above New Thylos darkened as massive ships descended from orbit. These vessels were unlike anything in the Thalorian understanding of technology. They seemed to be made of living shadow, their hulls shifting and flowing like liquid darkness. Where they passed, the air itself grew cold, and the vibrant colors of the crystal city began to fade. Veltar reached the communication center as the first Shadowkin landing craft touched down. The beings that emerged were tall and thin, wrapped in what looked like living darkness. Where they walked, the ground withered and cracked. Plants died instantly, and even the crystal structures began to lose their luminescence. Send the message, Veltar commanded the communication technicians. Broadcast on every frequency we know. Someone in the galaxy must be able to help us. The technicians worked frantically, boosting their transmission power to levels that would reach across the galaxy. The message was simple but desperate. This is Veltar of the Thalorian Collective. We are under attack by an ancient enemy called the Shadowkin Empire. They consume the life force of entire civilizations. We are peaceful people with no weapons to fight them. If there is anyone in the galaxy who can help, please respond. We do not have much time. The message reaches the void. The transmission raced across space at faster than light speeds, carrying the Thalorians' desperate plea to every corner of the galaxy. Most civilizations that received it were too far away to help, too weak to make a difference, or too afraid of the Shadowkin to respond. But in a small blue world in the outer spiral arm, a species that the Shadowkin had dismissed as too primitive to be worth harvesting was listening to the stars. The Deep Space Monitoring Station at Luna Base had been tracking unusual energy signatures for weeks. When the Thylaurian distress call reached them, it was Dr. Sarah Chen who first heard the message. Director Martinez, she called to her supervisor, "You need to hear this. It's not like anything we've received before." Director Martinez hurried to Dr. Chen's station, where the Thylaurian message was being decoded and translated by their most advanced computers. The desperation in Velatar's voice was clear even across the language barrier. "How far away are they?" Martins asked. "Approximately 58 light years," Dr. Chen replied. "And according to this message, they're facing something that has destroyed dozens of civilizations." Martinez stared at the readout. Humanity had been reaching for the stars for centuries, always wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was more terrifying than they had ever imagined. "Get me the Secretary General," Martinez ordered, "and contact Admiral Thompson at Space Command. Tell them we have a code black situation. First contact with hostile alien forces." As the alert went out across Earth, humanity faced its greatest test. They had always dreamed of joining a galactic community. Now they were being asked to help save it from a nightmare that had been consuming civilizations since before human history began. The Shadowkin had made one critical error in their calculations. They had dismissed humanity as too primitive to be a threat. They were about to discover that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from advanced technology, but from the willingness to fight for strangers, to risk everything for beings you've never met, and to stand against the darkness no matter what the cost. The galaxy had cried for help, and humanity was about to answer with everything they had. The gathering storm. Earth's response. The emergency session at the United Nations had been going for 6 hours straight. Every nation's representative sat in stunned silence as Admiral Thompson presented the intelligence gathered from the Thylaurian transmission. The holographic display showed the Shadowkin advance through the galaxy, a trail of dead worlds stretching back thousands of years. "Ladies and gentlemen," Secretary General Williams said, her voice heavy with the weight of the moment, "we are facing a decision that will define not just humanity's future, but potentially the survival of intelligent life in our galaxy." Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stood to address the assembly. "The technology readings we've analyzed from the Thylaurian message suggest these Shadowkin possess capabilities far beyond our current understanding. Their ships seem to manipulate dark energy itself. But there's something else we've discovered." She activated a new display showing energy patterns. The Shadowkin appear to feed on life force, but not just any life. They target civilizations that have developed what we might call advanced consciousness. They seek out species that have developed art, philosophy, complex emotions, and moral reasoning. In essence, they consume the very things that make life worth living. President Kumar of the Earth Federation leaned forward. "What does this mean for our response options?" Admiral Thompson answered grimly. "It means that even if we wanted to hide, we couldn't. Humanity's cultural development, our art, our literature, our music, all of this makes us exactly the kind of species the Shadowkin target. We're already on their list." The fleet assembles. Within 72 hours of receiving the Thylaurian distress call, humanity's response was taking shape. The largest space fleet in human history assembled at Luna Station. Ships that had been designed for exploration were hastily retrofitted with experimental weapons. Colony vessels were converted into mobile medical stations. Even civilian transports volunteered to carry supplies. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The vessel represented the pinnacle of human engineering, but even she knew it was primitive compared to what they were about to face. Her crew was young, many of them barely out of the academy, but their determination was absolute. Captain, her communications officer, Lieutenant Park, called out, "We're receiving final clearance from Earth Command. The fleet is authorized to proceed to the Thylaurian system." Santos looked out at the assembled ships. 37 vessels in total, carrying humanity's best and brightest into the unknown. It wasn't much against an empire that had consumed entire galaxies, but it was everything Earth could spare. Helm, set course for the Thyllorian system. Maximum speed. As the human fleet entered hyperspace, they carried with them something the Shadowkin had never encountered before: the willingness to fight for complete strangers, not for gain or territory, but simply because it was the right thing to do. A wriggle at a dying world. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Thyllorian system, and what they found made even the most hardened officers gasp in shock. The outer planets were already gray and lifeless, their surfaces cracked and withered. Debris fields filled the space between worlds, the remains of Thyllorian cities and ships that had tried to evacuate. "My God," whispered Dr. James Wright, the fleet's chief scientist. "It's like they've drained the life from entire worlds." But the inner system still showed signs of activity. The Thyllorian homeworld flickered with the faint light of crystal cities, though many areas had gone dark. Massive Shadowkin vessels hung in orbit like black scars against the stars. "Captain Santos," came a weak transmission from the planet's surface. "This is Veltar of the Thyllorian Collective. Are you the ones who answered our call?" "This is Captain Santos of the human fleet," she replied. "We received your distress signal. We're here to help." There was a long pause, then the sound of what could only be weeping. "You came. You actually came. We had given up hope that anyone would answer." First contact under fire. Landing on the Thyllorian homeworld was like stepping into a nightmare. The human diplomatic team, led by Dr. Wright and protected by a squad of Marines, found themselves in a world where the very air seemed drained of vitality. The crystal spires that had once gleamed with rainbow light were now dull and gray. Gardens that had bloomed with alien flowers were withered and dead. Veltar met them at what had once been a beautiful landing platform. The Thyllorian researcher looked exhausted, her crystalline form flickering weakly. Around her, dozens of other Thyllorians huddled in the shadows, their natural luminescence barely visible. "Thank you for coming," Veltar said, her voice carrying harmonics of gratitude and despair. "But I fear you may have arrived too late. The Shadowkin have been harvesting our people for 12 days now. Each day, more of our life force is drained away." Dr. Wright knelt beside a group of young Thyllorians, their crystal forms barely glowing. "What exactly do they do to you?" "They feed on our essence," explained another Thyllorian named Kakdar, who had been a healer before the invasion. "Not our bodies, but our consciousness itself. They drain away our memories, our emotions, our very sense of self. Those who survive become empty shells, unable to think or feel or create." Sergeant Rodriguez, the Marine squad leader, clenched his fists. "How many of your people have they taken?" "Of our 12 billion population, perhaps 8 billion remain," Veltar replied. "But fewer each day. And those they haven't harvested yet grow weaker as the Shadowkin presence spreads across our world." Learning the enemy. Back on the fleet, human scientists worked frantically to understand what they were fighting. The Shadowkin technology was unlike anything in their databases. The enemy ships didn't use conventional propulsion or weapons. Instead, they seemed to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. "It's not just advanced technology," Dr. Chen reported from her analysis station. "It's something else entirely. These beings appear to exist partially outside normal spacetime. That's how they can drain life force. They're accessing dimensions we can barely detect." Admiral Thompson, who had arrived with reinforcements, studied the tactical displays. "What are their weaknesses?" "Every enemy has something we can exploit." "That's just it, sir," replied Commander Blake, the fleet's tactical officer. "According to every record we found, no civilization has ever successfully defeated them. The best anyone has managed is a fighting retreat that delays the inevitable." But Dr. Wright had been studying the Merak beacon that Veltar had shown them. "There might be something," he said slowly. "The Merak message mentioned that the Shadowkin fear unity. Every species they faced fought alone. But what if that's not just a tactical advantage? What if there's something fundamental about unified consciousness that they can't drain? The test of unity. As if summoned by their discussion, a Shadowkin harvester descended toward the human landing zone. The creature that emerged was a nightmare made manifest, tall and impossibly thin, wrapped in what looked like living darkness that moved independently of any wind. Where it walked, the ground cracked, and the air itself seemed to grow thin. The human Marines raised their weapons, but their energy blasts passed right through the creature without effect. It moved toward the huddled Thalorians with predatory grace, and Dr. Wright could see their crystal forms growing even dimmer as it approached. "Fall back," Sergeant Rodriguez ordered, but Dr. Wright stepped forward instead. "Wait," he called. "Look at what's happening." As the humans and Thalorians pressed closer together, something remarkable occurred. The Thalorians' natural luminescence began to brighten, and the Shadowkin creature actually hesitated. The darkness around it seemed to flicker and weaken. That's it, Dr. Wright realized. They can't fully drain life force when multiple species are in close contact. Our different types of consciousness interfere with their feeding ability. The Shadowkin creature let out a sound that was like the universe screaming, then retreated toward its ship. Within minutes, more of the dark vessels were descending from orbit. Preparing for war, Captain Santos coordinated with Veltar and the surviving Thalorian leaders to plan their defense. The crystal beings had detailed maps of their world's energy networks, and their natural ability to communicate across vast distances made them perfect coordinators for the human forces. "We need to get as many of your people as possible to the evacuation zones," Santos explained. "Our ships can protect maybe 1,000,000 Thalorians, but that's only if we can hold the Shadowkin off long enough." "You would take us from our homeworld?" asked Elder Zintera, one of the few surviving Thalorian council members. "We'd take you to safety," Dr. Wright assured her. "And then we'd help you find a new home, or reclaim this one if possible. But right now, survival is what matters." Veltar's crystal form pulsed with a complex mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Why would you do this for us? We have nothing to offer you in return. We are not warriors. We have no advanced weapons or resources you need." Captain Santos looked at the gathered Thalorians, their forms flickering weakly but their spirits still intact. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because every civilization deserves the chance to survive and grow. And because if we don't stand together against something like this, who will?" The Shadowkin respond. As the human evacuation efforts intensified, the Shadowkin response was swift and brutal. Massive harvesters descended on the crystal cities, their dark energy weapons turning the beautiful spires to dust. But something was different this time. Where humans and Thalorians worked together, the harvesting process was less efficient. The Shadowkin had to work harder to drain the life force from their victims. Admiral Thompson received reports from across the system. "Captain Santos, we're seeing something unprecedented. The Shadowkin are having to commit more ships and resources to this harvest than ever before. Whatever effect the unity between our species is having, it's making them work for their victory." But the enemy was adapting. Larger vessels were arriving from deep space, and energy readings suggested they were preparing something devastating. "Sir," Lieutenant Park reported with barely controlled fear, "long-range sensors are detecting a massive Shadowkin fleet approaching the system. We're reading at least 200 vessels, including ship types we've never seen before." Captain Santos felt the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. Humanity had come to save one species and found themselves facing an enemy that had conquered galaxies. But as she looked at the mixed crews of humans and Thalorians working together, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. "All ships, this is Captain Santos," she broadcast to the fleet. "We came here to help the Thalorians, but we've discovered something bigger. We're not just fighting for one species anymore. We're fighting for the principle that life, consciousness, and freedom have value in this universe. We're fighting for the idea that strangers can become family, and that sometimes you have to risk everything to do what's right." The response from across the fleet was immediate and unanimous. Every captain, Every crew member, every Marine and scientist and engineer confirmed their commitment. They would stand with the Thylorians against the darkness, no matter what the cost. The Shadowkin Empire had consumed 48 civilizations by fighting them one at a time. Now they faced something they had never encountered before. Two species standing as one, willing to fight not for conquest or survival, but for the simple principle that some things are worth defending even when they belong to strangers. The battle for the soul of the galaxy was about to begin.